Okay, so I'm taking off my mask. I'm moving this picture of Elon Musk. Some people don't like him, but I like him. And I have my eraser, and we are ready to go. So this is the fundamentals of commercial real estate listings. This is our second class, and it will be uploaded onto YouTube so you can see it again later. And the first class is up there too. We're going to have less technical difficulties. We already have less technical difficulties today, but obviously there's still much to be improved. We'll get new lighting, we'll get new sound, and we'll just be overall smoother in this whole process. So we're going to recap last week. And what we talked about last week were basically the very fundamentals of commercial real estate. So we broke it down into product type first, which is in Queens, and it's retail, office, warehouse, and good. Retail, warehouse, office, and multifamily residential. Now, out of state, there's going to be more different types, which are like multifamily, like data storage, student housing, land, farms, all that stuff. But we're not going to talk about that because we're in Queens. And what we talked about was how you approach commercial real estate. First of all, as an investor, and then second of all, as a broker or agent, because that is what this class is for, to teach agents and brokers. But to do it properly, you need to understand where your client is coming from. And that all comes down to value, right? So the value of the real estate is based on income and expense. So I'm recapping this real quick so we can move on. But we left off last week showing how in a commercial retail property or lease, the money that comes in is mostly generated by rent. And the expenses that are going out are tax, maintenance, utilities, and like just a bunch of different types of expense, right? So you have like income, expense, and we left it off at, you got rent on this side, and that's all you got. And on this side, you have tax, you got CAM, which is maintenance, and you got utilities. And I'm going to do a plus for all the other stuff that's included over there. Now, the difference between a retail and an industrial lease is that a lot of the time in an industrial lease, the tenant is going to pay for these things. So you don't have that expense as a industrial lease usually, and that stabilizes the way you can forecast how much money you're making. Okay, so that's the recap. And I'm going to finish off last week's lesson with the following, which is office. Office, what's your income? You guessed it, rent. What is your expense? Tax, CAM, and utilities. But we're gonna break this down a little bit more, being into this next lesson, and we're gonna call it, because you're not gonna in an office building. There's like tons of offices, right? But the tax lot and the tax bill is for the entire building. So they're not going to pay the whole building's tax, and they're not going to pay the maintenance for the whole building, nor are they going to pay the utilities for the whole building. So what you have is something called proportionate share. But black is not working this time, contrary to my explanation, if you remember, of why black works. Let's go with this. Proportionate share. And proportionate share is usually calculated something along the lines of like how much space this space is taking up in relationship to how big the building actually is. So it's like the building's this big and the space is this big and it's like 10% of the building size, then what would happen is that you'd pay 10% of the tax, CAM, and utilities. And even in more particular, there's someone trying to join again. You're not getting that pop-up? Is good? Okay, cool. So welcome, Benjamin. The proportionate share is like the percentage of how much space that takes. And then we have something else that's called off the base year. Off the base year. And what off the base year means is that, let's say they sign a lease in 2020, and we know how much the tax is for the year or how much it was for last year. We know how much the building usually takes to maintain year after year, and we have an idea of what the utilities are. What they'll do is that the owner will pay the 2020 rates through the life of the lease. But the tenant will pay the proportionate share, which is off of the base year, so their percentage of the building off of the base year, which means the year-over-year increase. So let's say the tax and maintenance and utilities all become more expensive in 2021. You take the 2021 rates minus the 2020 rates, then you get that difference. That's the difference that the entire building needs to pay over and above 2020. And then you take a proportionate share from there. Retail also works like that, and these are not fixed, right? A warehouse can also work like this, but a lot of the time it doesn't. A lot of the time it does. You just need to understand what these things mean, how they're usually applied in the market, and then at the time of when you're speaking to your landlord or your tenant client and you're taking them to the space, you want to see how this all lines up compared to the rest of the market and how it all adds up to in conjunction to, which is the most important part, the base rent, right? And what you'll end up doing is that if you're taking a tenant to 3 different places, they'll all tell you what the base rent is. Everyone's like, what's the rent? This per square foot. Or what's the rent? This monthly cost. But we don't know if the tax, CAM, utilities are off the base year, what the exact proportionate share is, if it's the full tax, which means it's not off the base year, you're just paying the entire tax bill or a percentage of it. Our job as the professional here is to be able to crunch each property's numbers. You got to go to the Department of Finance and get the tax bill. You got to ask the owner what the CAM is. You got to ask, how are the utilities billed? Is it direct meter? Is there a sub meter? Is it included? And you could add all this stuff up and give all 3 to your client. Let's say it's a tenant, and give them like an apples to apples comparison rather than just giving 3 base rents and not knowing what's going on with the rest of the stuff. That's hugely important. And, if you don't know this stuff and you're just taking people around, they're going to ask you these questions. And if you really don't know it and you don't even know what questions they're asking and why, then they're not going to want to work with you. All right. So that's office. And the other part that we encounter in Queens all the time is multifamily residential, right? It's classified as a 4-family and up. And the reason for that is, like we explained last time, it's an investment. It's not a residential home that you're moving into. And the calculation for a multifamily residential on a sale is equivalent to adding up all the units, all 4 units, the rent. And with the same calculus here, because then you'll know how much money you're making a year, which is the income, then the net income, right? All your income combined, that's your gross income minus your expenses. You get something called the NOI, net operating income, which are terms that you definitely need to know because they're super basic and they come up all the time. So that's done a sale. How about a leasing of residential real estate? Do we ever go and say, hey, someone lease all 4 properties? So me as a commercial leasing broker, like I am representing this owner and leasing 4 properties. So the answer is no. That situation never happens. And if you're leasing just 1 unit out, you're a residential rental agent, right? So you're not a commercial. It's not commercial anymore. So that there is no leasing of one unit of residential stuff as a commercial leasing agent. So I got my coffee here, which is always good. So now we get into a good segue of something called the cap rate. And the cap rate, if you have experience in any commercial real estate and sales, the cap rate is what you would call, you know what, I'm going to put something back here to make it more straighter. Oh, something is back here already. Okay, fine. The cap rate is something that comes up all the time. Even if you're a newbie, you're like, you want to buy this property, Mr. Buyer? The cap rate is 6%, and that's all you know. And buyer's like, wow, 6%? Cool. I'll buy it. What's the calculation? You're like, I have no idea. They just told me this is the cap rate. So the cap rate is similar to our evaluation last time. I think I even wrote the cap rate, but this time I'm going to break it down a little bit more. So like your income, your purchase price. So you purchase the property or you're selling the property. Either one. $1 million. Very, very, very standard price in Queens, New York. And your income per year. I'm going to use some different numbers so it doesn't look all the same. Is, let's say, 200,000. And then let's say your expense now is well, I don't know, 125,000. So what does that mean? The breakdown of this is such. This is coming from rent. These are just hypotheticals, but they're pretty realistic. This is coming from expenses. Tax, CAM, utilities, plus more stuff, right? And you can make more money on rent with like laundry machines or cable, satellite that you're renting, or someone's putting solar panels, but that's not much. It's the rent. And you're going to have more expenses than this. Tax, CAM, utilities. You might have to hire a super. You might have to hire a lawyer. You have brokerage fees. You have a bunch of different stuff. So what do you come up with at the end? 75,000. So if you purchase this property for $1 million, and your gross income is $200,000 a year, and your expense per year is 125,000, your net is 75K, and we call that NOI, net operating income. The relationship between your NOI and your purchase or sale price is what we call, in real estate terms, cap rate. The capitalization rate, but your cap rate here is 7.5%. So when you're buying and selling real estate, what people really, really want to know, aside from the purchase price, is the income, all of the expenses, so they could figure out the cap rate. Now, we're gonna talk a little bit more about this because this class is about cap rates. And this is like a snapshot in time, right? So because it's a snapshot in time, our gross income may be 200,000. It may be 120. Our expenses may be 125,000. And if that's the case, we have a cap of 7.5. But what happens is these numbers can change. And the change of these numbers reflects the stability of the cap rate. So some factors that affect the stability that people will want to know when they're purchasing real estate is, for the gross income here, they'll ask, can they see the leases? They want to know how much, they want to know the structure of the leases, how much security deposit you have for each person, what kind of credit checks you ran. You know, if they really want to go deep into it, they could look at all the different stuff to see how stable each lease is. Then you want to look at the expenses, which are also tied to the leases. Who pays what and how is it structured? For the tax, you know, that's something that can't be really forecasted. But if you're very deep into the market and you're listening to the news, you can have an idea of where things are headed, kind of. You look at the maintenance. If you're really good at this stuff, you bring a contractor and you see how the building is currently being maintained, right? And can you improve on that? Can you change the boiler? Can you change the lights to LED? Can you make changes in the building that'll decrease the expense? Or is there something that's not in the CAM expense that there should be, that they didn't include? Maybe the boiler needs to be fixed. Or maybe they're not cleaning the place daily and weekly and stuff like that. And that's not the type of operation you run as a landlord. You want a clean building. Maybe their building hours are very short. And when you buy the building, you're going to extend the hours because you think that's what this market wants. And that's going to increase your CAM, right? So there's different things that will decrease and increase the expense line. And at the end of the day, this number is going to shift and your cap rate's going to shift, right? So really good real estate investors will go into a deal, analyze it, and see where they can make the cap rate better or where is it actually worse than proposed. Not only do they use their skill in understanding real estate, understanding the market, and all of that stuff, what they also do is, and I mean, this is a different side of it, but most of the time when a property is available, there's like a listing on the MLS or on LoopNet or on an email blast, and they list these things. Purchase price here, you got this much in rent, these are the expense lines, and here's your cap rate. Great deal with a nice description on them. Beautiful corner property located in the heart of this and that, blah, 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 blah. You must buy it now, or it's someone's gonna buy it soon. But a lot of times these numbers are wrong, right? The listing agent is going to do everything they can to make the property look as good as possible, even without lying. I mean, there's a lot of liars out there, but even without lying, you're still going to try to inflate and do this and that. And it's your job it's really ultimately the issue will fall on the buyer. But again, as a broker, are you just transactional and just putting people together and letting them do things? Or do you really, really know what you're doing and you can add value, right? So we're going to cut here real quick and talk about being a broker, and what's important about it. Like, a lot of people, especially in Flushing and in Queens, they get hired to do something for a cheap price, or because people think that they can just bring the buyer and seller together per se, or just do the marketing because people don't have time. And if you don't do a good job, you can get lucky and make the flyer and just throw the price up there and have the two parties come together and ultimately work out the deal because they need to get it done. But on a long-term relationship, if you can actually, let's say you're helping a buyer, if you can actually take a listing and analyze it and make the calls for them to see what the real deal is, and you can filter these things and now pass like the filtered information to your buyer, that's a tremendous amount of work off their back. And if they can trust you to do it, they're going to keep using you. If you're out in the market a lot and you see a lot of these deals, and you can not only filter the deals but filter out the good ones, I mean, you have like a gold in your hand. Everyone will want that, but it's a lot of work, and it's a lot of skill. And in commercial real estate, it's different from residential because a lot of the time you're going to work with buyers who are not just buying one property in the market all the time. And if they can rely on me, like, Michael, I know you're good to go. I'm going to be one of the go-to people they call. Every time I throw something their way, they know it's been screened and they want to keep this relationship with me long term. It's going to make my overall transaction smoother, even to the part where I get paid, right? If I'm selling a space and I can also make the same calculus and help the sellers just put everything together and handle everything, they'll want to use me again. And really, it may be less important per se in terms of the calculus, but it's more important in terms of like network and database, and that's for another class. But so this screen keeps shifting. Other people, it's like bugging me out. I wish I could just make this just me. Okay, but it's fine. Okay, anyway, so I was talking about, the stability of stuff. So that's in terms of being a broker. You really want to know what you're doing because long term, the same people use you over and over again. If you're leasing like me, a lot of these owners own big buildings and spaces come up for lease all the time. And if you can show you're really good at your job and you have this big network, then you'll get rehired for this stuff. This really comes down to like a relationship business because your clients are repeat. That's very, very unlike residential real estate, where a lot of the time your seller and your buyer are like one-time shots. They're buying a house once this next 15 years, sellers selling the house and retiring to Florida. In residential, you have to constantly keep looking for more clients and prospecting and doing mailers and all this stuff. In commercial, it's a little bit less. You still want to do your marketing, you still want to do your flyers, but each client has more long-term potential. So now I'm going to get into a little bit about the deeper end of the value and why this stuff is important. I mean, you can see why this is important on a day-to-day or month-to-month, year-to-year basis. That's how much money you're making and spending. And if you want to sell it, if the market is selling at, a 6% cap, that's the market, you have to stay around there. This bottom line, this cap rate affects your sales price. So because, let's just say in Queens, a couple of years ago, you could sell for like a 4 cap. Well, a 4 cap is going to change this number pretty dramatically. And all you need to do is reverse the calculation at 4%. I don't know off the top of my head. But anyway, that'll increase your sales price significantly. The other part that I'm going to just touch on this real quick, which is ultra important that a lot of real estate agents and brokers don't even really understand or don't even know exists, is that this same analysis of figuring out the stability of the income and expense, owners go to the bank and refinance the properties based off this stuff. So let's say you paid $1 million and at a 7.5 cap, but now you can increase the income to, I don't know, double this. And you could decrease the expenses by like 50K because you're really good at what you're doing. You saw a good opportunity. They sold it for too cheap, whatever, right? What happens is you can refinance it at the bank. And because this went up and this went down, you might be at a much more substantial valuation. You could maybe increase the price to like $2 million. And then when you go to the bank, you pull out like 1.8 million or 1.6 million or something on the refi. That's like for a later class. But just know that when you pull out a mortgage and you refinance a mortgage, what's the payoff? Like 30 years, right? So in essence, what a lot of these buyers and property owners are doing is like what they want to do is something called stabilize the building. And once they stabilize the building, you don't have to wait 12 or 13 years, whatever it is, to get your money back on this cap rate. You go to the bank, refi, and the bank cashes you out immediately for the future cash flow. So not only do you get your $1 million back, you get like double it, and you get to use it now. And the rent that comes in from the building pays off the note. Just wanted to tell you that to give you an idea of the entire scope. So that really covers it from purchase to stabilize to refi. And this is the thought process that is going on in your property owner mind the whole time, right? The question will be, one very important question is, do they have a mortgage and are they trying to stabilize the building to refi? Or have they owned this for a long time and have no mortgage and don't even need to play that financing game? These are huge decisions on basically why the owner or buyer did purchase this piece of property in the first place. And if you could understand this and help them navigate and get them to their goals, that is what they are paying you for, right? And further along this series, I'm going to talk about the million different things we need to do to make that process smooth. But for now, we're gonna just stop right there with the note that if you can make everything smooth, you're an awesome broker. You'll get hired all the time. You'll close a lot of deals for a lot of different reasons. You'll make a lot of money. And if you don't know that stuff, you're literally just transactional. You have no value except what you could bring to that deal that day out of, I don't know, luck or coincidence. So that's where we are right now. We're gonna get people in here and fix this setup a little more. So we talked about stability. We talked about financing. We also talked about the sales price, and yeah, we talked about the future stuff. All right, so we'll go into a little bit now about the job of being a real estate agent and a broker, right? So with the different types of properties in Queens, all right, retail, office, warehouse, residential, understanding how the income and expense works, and ultimately understanding the cap rate for the sales price and why they need to do that in terms of the financing. Now the question is, all right, I got my license, so what do I do, right? I'm sure you all still have that question about, all right, that's good, but what do I do? And the first thing you got to understand is, let's go with getting a listing. So my time is so this went faster than I thought it would. So let's go with getting a listing, right? So when you get a listing, geez, Brown. When you get a listing, it's usually through like a network, a friend, a cold call, whatever it is. So you have a listing appointment. I'm just gonna freestyle this because this is how it has to be. So let's say you're new to real estate and you want to do commercial, and either you come to Project Queens and I give you leads to work on, which is definitely the best way because I'll give you good leads and walk you through everything, or you're out and about and a family member, a friend, a nonprofit you joined, a cold call you did, whatever it is, they're like, all right, I have something for lease and I want to go move this stuff and I want you to help me. All right, so what do? You look up the address, right? And there's a couple of questions that you want to know before going to the home. So similarly, residentially, like how big is it? What floor is it on? And is it retail, office, or warehouse? Then you go do a comp, right? So what commercial real estate brokers and CoStar, which are super duper expensive. And what you do is just like an MLS comp search, you find that product type, that size, that location, whatever it is, and you pull up the bunch of them for the past 5 or 10 years, you start calculating what the price should be, right? So after you kind of get a market price, after you know where it is, what you want to do is go and tell them what your services are, right? So I'm going to do classes on all this stuff, by the way, but I'm going to give you an overview. We'll have some Q&A, and then the next weeks, I'm going to start breaking each thing down in these classes. So to get a listing, due diligence is going to be the first class. How to comp it out, how to look up stuff, and how to understand what the price should be, right? That's the comp. Then the listing appointment. The next step would be a listing agreement and what that listing agreement says and how it's structured. That's like another class. And then let's say you get the listing, then the marketing of the property. So You can do like a for sale sign or for lease sign. You put it up on LoopNet. If you have money or paying for you, you have it on CoStar too. You have like a deep database. You're doing your social media. And all this stuff. If you have brokers that work for you, or you're in a company, you give it to your brokers, or you can share with other agents. You could contact the local agents that are really good to see if they have any leads. All this different stuff, right? So your idea is you're really trying to move the space or sell the space, right? And after that, that's just to generate leads, showings, and ultimately offers. Then you have to understand the offer sheet. So that marketing will be a class, might be 2 classes, and going over the LOI, which is the letter of intent or the contract, that's another class in terms of what that LOI says, how it's structured. I mentioned before that the LOI is going to have the base rent, the tax, the CAM, the utilities, how that's structured, but there's also going to be like 15 other items that are in every standard LOI, which need to be fleshed out. We're talking about free rent. We're talking about build out. Is a landlord building the space? Is a tenant? What's the tenant's going to do to build the space? How is the space conditioned now? It's going to talk about commission, right? So all that stuff plays into, I finally did enough showings to get a good offer, and now we're going back and forth on that offer letter to close the deal, right? And after you have a signed deal, then you go to really like walking the steps of the deal through, getting paid, and how you do that. Underlying all this is another class about like customer service. Are you reporting to your clients, right? In tangent with all this stuff too is how detailed are your notes, and your organizations of your contacts, organization of your property database, organization of what people in the market are looking for, right? So like at Project Queens, right now I have like 15 listings. It's a lot of square footage, maybe 200,000 square feet. I only do Queens. I have tons of calls and emails every single day with people calling about 1, 2, 3, or 4 of the properties. We log every single lead and put it in their bucket. How much square foot you're looking for? When do you want it? What kind of business are you? Et cetera, et cetera. What's your budget? How high the ceilings do you need? Any weird little things that I might need to know? And we log all of that stuff, and we take this log and we report to our clients on what activity we've been doing and what the feedback is. But not only that, this organization also stems into the future. When I go get new listings, particularly if it's in Flushing or in Long Island City or in Queens, retail, I'm doing a lot right now. Office, I'm doing a lot right now. Warehouse, not so much because it's hot, so I don't have that many listings. But those inquiries are still like from the past 2 years are like logged in the database. When I go and get a new listing, I have the luxury now. If it's like 1,000 square foot retail space in Flushing, I got like 15 people lined up already from my past listings that I may be able to just move the deal right away. And this comes with like market activity, right? Organization, and what these things do that work all in this conjunction of this sphere of being a good broker is, and a lot of people doing residential may have experienced this before. I don't have to comp stuff out anymore per se, right? I can run my comps and I can see what CoStar is telling me, but then I also have my internal database and I know what prices are in my own mind real time. And if you're used to like hopping around to different locations, right? And then one day you're selling this, now you're selling that. Every single time you go to the listing appointment, you got to like figure out what the price is, right? It's so much work. And then like 3 months later, let's say you do get the listing, 6 months later from working the listing, you're like, man, this isn't the price. That's what the MLS told me. That's what my comp report said, but it's not the price. You were just off. And you spend all that time working just to give you the conclusion Like, hey, seller, it's priced too high, right? So not only do I know exactly what the prices are in my region, I could consult other people. I could say that's what the kind of public information says, but I know from my own internal experience and all the deals that I'm doing where that's off and where that's on. So what I'm trying to say right now is like you get the lead, you do the due diligence, you get the listing through your listing agreement, you do the marketing, you put in the offer, and on top of all of this, you have organization of your data, customer service, organization of the market, understanding the market so you don't have to keep doing it, a database of people looking to buy or lease, a database of people who are looking to buy and sell, or people that you didn't get the listing, but you know the property is available. And all of this works in conjunction with each other. And that's what a good broker does. At the end of the day, that's already very, very difficult to do. And I'm going to be honest with you right now. Most people that I know have told me not to teach this class. They're like, why the hell would you teach this class in public to strangers? And my answer to that is nice in a certain way, and it's pretty mean in a certain way. All right, I'm going to tell you the nice part first. The nice part is that I don't really care. Everyone's too private in this industry. There's a lot of shady people. And I'd gladly give everyone the information to do this the right way, to totally fuck up the market and just watch everyone hate me. Because I feel like the standard of this job should be higher. And I'm happy to teach people how to do it if they want to learn. The benefit to me is that I want people to join my company. I have leads to give out, and I walk people through properties. We have an office in downtown Flushing. So if you're interested in learning commercial and doing it full time, come over. Give us a shout. We'll set up an interview. I think right now, I mean, this is something to change, but for residential, we have the MLS. We're one of the only commercial companies that have MLS, and I could talk to you about why we have that. But I give a 90% split on residential because I don't do it. That's just like side stuff that you guys do and you need the MLS to do. So I have it. But on commercial, my split's like 70-30. That's for now. And then, get in now before the rates change. And not only are the splits really good, I will provide buyer and tenant leads, and I share all of my listings. I'm going to give my listings for you people to work so that you can slowly advance through the levels and end up finally knowing what you're doing. Here's the bad reason why I do this. It's really mean. And then we'll do Q&A. Most of the people, I will teach everything exactly what to do, right? I already just said a lot. Most people can't do that, okay? And the way I do it is like totally honest, and I don't look at my own pocket. I like hard work. I want to do a good job, and that's the kind of clients I work with that appreciate that about me. If they don't want that, then that's not my clients anyway, right? So on top of everything I said, like, I conduct myself in a way where it's honest, hardworking, professional, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Even less people are going to be able to do that. And if you can do all of that, and one day you're in Flushing or in Queens getting a bunch of listings, and people will say, hey, man, you should have never taught that girl or that guy. They're killing it right now. Those could have been yours. I'll be so happy that you're doing that because we can now work together on deals. So that's why I do this. And I just want to see what happens. It's 11:20. If there's no questions, we're just going to end it here. And then you could always reach out privately and stuff to talk more. And then next week's class, we're going to start talking about, I'm assuming we're going to be talking about like the listing process. So like I just said, step one is going to be due diligence. How do you price something? and then we'll talk about the listing paperwork and then marketing, and we'll just walk it through step by step like that. So, and okay, so we're gonna cut it off here. Thanks everyone for joining, and then I will see you next week. Bye-bye.